All right, I'm here with World Championship trainer Glenn Rushton. Glenn, it's been a few weeks since we caught up last, mate. A lot happening in Australian boxing right now. Where do we begin? Jai Opetaia. He's signed with Zuffa Boxing, set to make his debut in a few weeks' time, mate. Haven't got your thoughts on this one. What are you made of Jai signing to Zuffa, and where does Jai go this year in the world of boxing?
Look, I think Joy goes to the top of the cruiserweight division. I think he's got the skills to beat anyone in the world in that division. I think it's only a matter of time before he, unifies the division and moves up to heavyweight. Where the big money is, and obviously there's a lot of very exciting competition in the heavyweights at the moment. But I'm sure he's got unfinished business here, and he wants to unify and probably follow in Usyk's path, and just then move up into the heavyweight. So. And, I think he can put himself in either division. But, let's hope this is a good signing for him and he gets the fights that he wants and the money that he's looking for, and does Australia proud.
What are you made of, I guess, Jai's evolution? What have you made of his career to date? And can he sort of become undisputed there at cruiserweight?
Absolutely. I remember Jai actually obviously went to the Olympics with Jeff, as you remember, in 2012 as a 17-year-old. And when we went down for that selection trials, I had one of my heavyweights, Joe Goodall, who I was hoping to get him to the Olympics along with Jeff, but he didn't make it. It was very close. He won 3 national titles, and obviously we know Joe did exceptionally well at bronze worlds and the silver at Glasgow. But Jai Opetaia that year was a young 17-year-old, and I remember him saying, when we went to the Oceanias, people were asking him, what's his plan B? And he said, there is no plan B. Like, it's boxing or bust. There is no plan B. And I thought, wow, I like this kid. He's just so focused. It's just all or nothing. The famous Chinese saying that if you chase 2 rabbits, you'll catch neither. And Jai's only after 1 rabbit, and he knows which rabbit that is. He's got his sights set on it, and he's doing it. And I think what he did against Breedis in that first fight was Herculean. That was just insane. What he did to come back there with that jaw and get that win against a great fighter in Breedis. And he's got the goods. He's got the skills. He's a great southpaw. He's slick. He can fight on the inside. He can fight on the outside. So he's got all the tools, and he's as tough as teak. And I don't have any doubts that he can unify the division.
Now, mate, you're synonymous with boxing up here in Queensland. Another Queenslander that's got a big shot at a title coming up, Liam Paro. What are you made of his career to date, and can he win this fight against Lewis Crocker?
Yeah, look, I think he can. Liam's a good fighter. He's done very, very well. It's a shame that he had the setback and that loss, and hopefully he's rebuilt himself up, and maybe the second coming is the big one, but he's got to get past this next opponent first, and let's see how that all unfolds. But that's a tough fight for him. But he's a good kid. He's very tough, and obviously he's going to have all of Australia behind him in that. And we used to come down here and spar Jeff, and we went over recently to do some sparring with Liam, with Andy Hunt. Went over there to do some sparring. Unfortunately, we had a freak cut to Andy's eye in the first round. It was just shaping to be a really good spar, and we thought, this is going to be good. You could just see as it was unfolding already, and then that was just he had a head guard on everything. It was just weird how it just somehow got in under his head guard. Yeah, so he stopped the spar. But look, he was looking good that day. I thought he's looking sharp, and all I can do is, like the rest of Australia, is hope that he has a good camp and he's injury free through the camp, and obviously is well, and if he does that, he's got a massive chance.
Would be for a welterweight world title. You and Jeff Horn were the last to win a belt in that division. Can you believe it's almost 10 years since that win over Manny Pacquiao?
Yeah, it's crazy when you think back about it, isn't it? It's nearly 9, but like you say, years. It does feel almost like yesterday sometimes. It's just. And as you said, welterweight's always been this incredible division for a very long time. You've got the biggest guys with the smallest gloves, and that's why I'm targeting young Suleiman Ahmed in that division. I just think it's such a blue ribbon sort of division, that welterweight division. And yeah, for Liam Paro to secure a world title in that division, that would be absolutely brilliant.
Now, mates, last time we caught up about a month ago now, the big controversy surrounding Nikita Tszyu's win over Zerafa. 4 weeks on, any more reflections on that night? Have your opinions changed at all? There was some concerns about Zerafa's mental health. How do you sort of reflect on that fight?
Yeah, look, I haven't spoken to Michael since that fight, so I don't know where his head's at. But, you've just got to, as long as the hunger's still there, if the hunger's still there, then, you can overcome. Everything is fixable. That's my belief. Everything is fixable. What lessons have you learned from it? As they say, there's no losses, just lessons. What have you learned from it? And is the hunger still there? And if those questions, and the body is healthy, then anything is fixable. You've just got to get back to the drawing board and say, where do we go? And as I mentioned last time, the only way forward was total ownership of it, just saying, look, I completely own it. Yeah, I stuffed up. I lied afterwards, and just own it. Then there's, how can you argue? How can anyone argue with you if you keep agreeing with them? Yeah, I stuffed up. Yeah, I lied. That's all you can do is then eventually the dust settles and then you start rebuilding and say, well, where do we go now? And I think nothing's changed in that regard. He's just got to decide, is the hunger still there? Do I want to go again? And if so, then, he's got to do his, obviously, rebuilding from there. But, the crowd want to see great fights, but they do want to actually see the fight. They want to see the fight that they paid for. So I think we've got to get that right. And if I was doing a contract up, I'd be saying, hey, there's conditions. There's certain conditions that have got to be met in this next contract. This is what happens. There's no money paid if the fight is stop and just spell out the conditions. And I think the public are going to probably demand something like that as well, and just know that they're going to, when they pay for a fight, they're going to get the fight they paid for.
Just on Nikita Tszyu, you watching that fight, did you see many improvements from Nikita in that fight? He got hit a couple of times there in the first round, but what did you see from Nikita?
Yeah, look, I thought he had improved a little. I mean, the areas he's still got to work on, as we know, is his defence. He tends to be used primarily offence as defence. And yeah, offence is a great defence. The old saying is the more punches you throw, the less the other guy will probably throw. So look, his offence is good, but still there are defensive skills there that I see with him. He's still fairly easy to hit, I would say, okay, and it's something I'm sure he's working at and trying to improve that to make himself less vulnerable, because if you want a long career, don't get hit as much, so you've got to develop the skills. The crafty fighters like the Terence Crawfords of the world, that are a great example of not getting hit too much, and a very clever boxer. But when he hurts you and he breaks you down, he puts you away very quickly. And he's got to become that sort of fighter, Nikita, a much craftier fighter that doesn't get hit as much and just break you down strategically and then turn it on and go for the kill once he set you up and has an advantage.
You mentioned Terence Crawford. One of his last opponents, Errol Spence, has been sort of tied to a fight with our own Tszyu. What are your thoughts on a matchup between Errol Spence Jr. and Tszyu?
Look, it's interesting. There's question marks about both. I mean, I keep thinking of the movie A Few Good Men, where Jack Nicholson famously said, "You want the truth? You can't handle the truth." And the question is, can Tszyu handle the truth? Obviously, if the truth was at his best, the answer to me is a resounding no. You can't handle the truth. Okay, but is he still the truth? Or is he now a lie? And as they say, the three versions of the truth: there's your truth, my truth, and then there's the real truth. So it normally sits in the middle. Look, the big question mark to me is I think I know where Tszyu's at. What I don't know is, where is Errol Spence Jr. at? That's what I don't know. This long layoff, has it been a blessing or a curse? That's what we're going to find out when they step into the ring. Because if the real Errol Spence Jr., not the one that got in the ring against Terence Crawford, and, I think we all saw still the aftermath of that horrific car accident that he had. And, as great as Terence Crawford is, and I've got nothing but praise for Terence Crawford, I think we all know that wasn't the real Errol Spence that climbed into the ring that night. So in 2023. So look, a lot's happened. It's nearly 3 years since that last fight of his against Terence Crawford. Where is he at now? I don't know. I really don't. But if he's back and it's the real Errol Spence Jr. gets into that ring, Tim's in for a very, very difficult night.
I don't know if you saw Tim Bradley's comments last night saying that Errol Spence knocks Tim Tszyu out within 4 rounds, and also that Nikita Tszyu is a much better fighter than Tim. Any reaction to those comments?
Look, they're interesting comments. A lot of respect for Timothy Bradley. We actually thought we were going to fight Timothy Bradley. Actually, when we got Manny Pacquiao, we thought we were going to have to go through Timothy. So, was a great fighter, as we all know. But certainly, as far as those comments go, when I watched the two lads in the amateurs, Tim and Nikita, I always felt Nikita was a little better than Tim in the amateurs. That was my belief back then. As kids, they were both good, but I always thought Nikita was slightly better than Tim. And I've always thought he had the potential to go further than Tim in the professionals. That was just, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong there. I mean, it's just an opinion. But I always thought he did, but there's still things with Nikita, as I mentioned just before there, that I'd like to see him fix. But, I think, look, as I said, I think where Timothy, I don't know, Timothy might know more about where Errol Spence is at the moment than I do. This is the key. He may know more of the moving parts. But it's hard to say is where it's going to be. I'm like most of the world. I haven't seen Errol Spence in any way, shape, or form. And Jai, has Timothy seen Errol Spence sparring recently, or has he been watching his work? I mean, what are those comments based on? That's what I'd say.
Yeah. What about Tim Tszyu? If you were in his corner advising Tim Tszyu, would you take you obviously don't know where Errol's at, but the Errol that is at his best, would you advise Tim Tszyu to take this fight so soon after the sort of couple of years he's had, or does he need some sort of more rebuilding fights first?
But there's a lot of, again, moving parts here. Firstly, where is Tim's hunger at? He's in an awkward spot that, you've got so many preps in a career for a boxer. There's so many, and you don't want to waste them. I tried not to waste preps with Jeff Horn's career. We fought 11 world-ranked opponents on the way to beating Pacquiao. I said, let's not waste fights. Let's not waste preps. So Tim's probably thinking, look, if I fight a keep busy sort of fight or whatever, and I believe he's looking at having another fight in March, so I hear. How that impacts the contract, I don't know, and who he's thinking of fighting there, I don't know. But again, there's only so many preps in you, and you've got to make them count. So if you really genuinely believe that he could beat Errol Spence Jr., and of course, if the money's right, as Terence Crawford says, if the money's right, we do the fight. So if the money's right, and he genuinely thinks he can beat him, yeah, go for it. But if there's doubts in his mind about whether he's got it right, and I still haven't seen Tim, I have not yet seen a fight of Tim's where I've gone, yep, you've got it all together, Tim. You've got all the pieces are there. Because one of the things I often say to the boys, when you've got all the answers, what is there to worry about? But so far, I haven't seen with Tim all the answers. I'm not saying he can't get there. I don't know where his head's at. I don't know where his body's at. I don't know financially where he's at and how much, I don't know all of those. I don't have the answers to all of those questions, but it is a big step. It's a big fight. If Errol Spence is anywhere near his best, if he's even 80% near his best, this is a hard fight. If he's only 70 or 60, or if he's shot mentally, physically, hey, take the name, take the fight, get the win and move on. But there's a lot of unanswered questions here, Jai.
You mentioned Tim might have a fight here in Australia next month. One of your guys was actually linked to the fight, Andrew Hunt, in an article this week. Was there any calls to you guys? I know he's supposed to fight soon. Was there any?
Look, I haven't heard Look, I haven't heard the phone ring at all. No, certainly no calls from, No Limit or anyone about that fight. So it hasn't been raised to me. Yeah, Andrew Hunt's a very slick southpaw. We saw he put Munafati away fairly quickly, had 100 at a fight. So he's a very experienced guy that's very fast, and he's slick, and he's got power. And so, yes, obviously, he would be a great opponent leading into an Errol Spence Jr. fight, but certainly a very risky fight. This is not, if you've got a fight with Errol Spence Jr., you'd want to be careful taking on Andrew Hunt a few months before. That's all I can say. It would be a very dangerous warm-up. It's not a warm-up fight. That's a very serious test for Tim Tszyu to be thinking about, is Andrew Hunt.
Just last one for you. Tim's only 31. If he wins this next fight, gets the Spence fight, a loss to Errol Spence, would that see the end of Tim Tszyu's career? And would you then look back and say he's been poorly managed or sort of hasn't achieved what he should have, given he's only 31? Or is that, how would you see that?
Yeah, look, as long as his head's okay, and he hasn't suffered, there's no major CTE issues or anything like that. Like, if his health is good, he's not old. I mean, I think boxers lose the hunger before they get too old, generally, in most instances. So assuming that the hunger is there and the health is good, it would depend how the fight went down. Like, if he lost to Errol Spence, but Errol Spence appeared to be at his very best and Tim gave him a heck of a fight, put him on his bum, and it was a very narrow majority decision or something, split decision. Look, it could reignite Tim Tszyu. It could be huge. But again, if he went out there and he did get put away, as Timothy Bradley said, within 4 rounds, and he looked terrible in the process and he was getting hit and Errol looked a class above him, that could be very damaging, because it would basically say, look, you're not up to the top guys, like the people like the Crawfords, the Spencers, the Sean Porters and these sorts of guys. Okay, so that's what it would say. So it's not a matter of just whether he loses, it's how the fight unfolds, how good Errol looks. Worst case scenario for Tim would be if Errol looked terrible and he still beat Tim. that would be a disaster, So yeah, there's too many unanswered questions there, Jai. All we can do is wait and see how the fight unfolds, and then we'd have to reevaluate how Tim looked. Look, I hope Tim's learning things. He's over there, I believe, in Miami training. I hope the camp's going really well for him, and I hope that he's improving his overall skills over there. But the only time we're going to know is when the bell goes ding.
I'm going to squeeze one more in. The criticism that Igor copped after Tim's losses against Fondora and Buckram, you copped a lot of criticism at the end of Jeff Horn's career. How does that feel as a trainer, as someone that takes these guys to those titles and achieves so much, and then you cop criticism as if you don't know what you're doing? How does that feel?
Yeah, look, it's frustrating. Look, I feel for every trainer out there. Look, we all do our utmost, but you've got to understand, all the onlookers out there, it's easy to be a critic. Okay, it's so easy. They don't understand all the moving parts. So my basics is forgive them because they don't know what's going on. They don't understand. Like, this is what I said when Jeff fought. I was the only one who knew all the moving parts. That's everything management-wise, where he's going, his fitness, his camp, because I trained and managed him, what was coming up in the future, the risks, the probabilities, all the moving parts, and be able to weight all of them. And it's frustrating when someone comes along with just that little piece of information and they become an expert. It's like I'm saying about these fights. There's so many moving parts we don't know. Where's Errol at? Where's Tim's at? There's all these moving parts. So yes, I feel for Igor, and you've got to, he either focuses on all the great things he's achieved or the mistakes that we inevitably make. And of course, the more we do, the more mistakes we made. Some of the greatest people of all time and greatest trainers, we've all made mistakes because we're actually out there doing things. We're putting our egos on the line, the same as the fighters are doing. I often say to the fighters, how many times can you put your ego on the line? And if you're too, as I say to people, if you're not strong enough to fail, you're too weak to succeed. And that goes for trainers too. If you're not strong enough to fail and cop it, and I don't mind, like, I don't care. Like, if people are welcome to their opinions and they're entitled to those opinions too. But I just think about it and I think, look, you don't understand all the moving parts. If you want to ever sit down over a coffee, I'm more than happy. And like, if anyone wanted to sit down with me, I'd explain to them everything. I can tell them every single thing about Jeff's career, every decision I made, the reason I made it. I could explain it all to them. Or do you just want to, do you want to vent? And if you just want to vent, you go ahead and vent, and, that's okay. But yeah, look, I feel for him and I trust he's okay and he moves on, and, I'm sure he'll continue to develop good fighters. So.
All right, mate. Always appreciate your time, and we'll catch up again soon.
You take care, Jai. Have a lovely day. And like you say, exciting times for Australian boxing.
Yes. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.